Hi, everybody. We're the Star Trek folk. My name is Patrick Cronin, and I was in the last season, played Urko, the Minister of Culture on the most boring planet in the universe. And several funny stories, but I'll let my colleagues tell who they are.
I played Landy. I did a Next Generation also. I was the head cop on a planet we never saw before. But they made me redo all my words because they said there's no Bronx in outer space. You never saw this race before. How do you know?
Yeah, why not?
I had to redo every line of dialogue.
Hi, I'm Stephen Manley. I played the Pon-farr Spock in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock.
Ah, wonderful. Very good. Excellent. So here we are, three Star Trek folk. I guess we could each tell a story about.
I just told mine.
That was it. Well, I have two. Well, three actually. It was the last season of Star Trek TNG, and Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes were going nuts. You know, you get the end of a long series, they go crazy, even though the money and all, but they're going crazy. So in between scenes, Patrick Stewart and Jonathan did Romeo and Juliet. So Patrick was Juliet, and Jonathan was Romeo, and they knew the lines. So we'd shoot a scene in the thing room, or they'd shoot, somebody, and then they'd start. And they did the balcony scene, was my favorite, it was brilliant. And at one point, Patrick jumped off the set into Jonathan's arms and drove him to the ground and said, "Don't worry, I'm in touch with my feminine side," and gave him a big kiss. It was a great show. I found it a wonderful route to work. The other story I have is I was paid, I don't know, $5,000 for the week, but I ended up making $14,000 in overtime because we had a 9 a.m. call. The first day is an 8-day shoot. So first day I'm there at 9 a.m. and I was in the makeup chair for 4 hours. It doesn't look like that, but it takes a while to get that right. So, and I had great makeup artists, so I go on set at noon, and we worked until midnight, and then they're supposed to give you 8 hours. I was back at 7, and so golden time and double over, and yeah, I ended up making 15 grand.
I should have brought my picture. I have my pictures out on the table, because the same thing. They were very sweet. They gave me my pieces.
Oh, nice.
And I have a couple of life molds from 2 other pictures from The Blob and Stargate Atlantis. So I have them placed on one of those at home, so you get to see 2 different shows at the same time. And the one real plus for me was it made me a hero at my son's elementary school. And I was able to bring him and his 2 best friends onto the comm and sit in the captain's chair.
Oh, nice. My version of that is I had 2 teenage boys in LA when they were growing up, and they actually are the older one is in the biz. He's a book reader. James Patrick Cronin reads for the New York Times, the Atlantic, etc. But both my sons, James and Charlie, didn't care about me at all, really. And until I did Saved by the Bell, a show I loathed, and then they went crazy. "You're on Saved by the Bell." "Yes, I am, son. I'm a real man. I'm your dad."
I had that with my mother. It was, honest to God, the first guest star I did was back here, was the 2nd episode of Dukes of Hazzard. And for 8 years, I was an actor, making a living, thank God. And for 8 years, my mother kept saying, "Go back, get your teaching so you have something to fall back on." And I did Dukes of Hazzard, and I don't know, something maybe old enough to remember TV Guide.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I appeared in TV Guide, and when she saw my name in the guide, it was my son, the actor.
Wonderful, man.
Your turn.
My turn. What type of story would you like to hear? I've got tons of them.
Go ahead.
For you, I shot for a week on the Genesis Planet set. Leonard Nimoy was a great director and very much liked working with all of the actors. On my last day, there was a transition from myself to a guy who had 2 shots as Spock at age 25. So after I got my headache, screamed, ran out of the shot, they put Joe in, and he got up, right? So he had aged. So I walked over to the craft service area to get some tea, and something there. And when I looked, the door to the stage opened, and immediately you could recognize the silhouette of Bones McCoy, Scotty, Sulu, and Chekhov, and in front of them was William Shatner. And they were all kind of backlit in the afternoon sun walking into the stage. And then when they got into the stage, of course, you could see who they were. And it was kind of a surreal moment to see those guys walking in. And William Shatner went right onto the stage and was talking with Leonard Nimoy about what they were going to be doing. But DeForest Kelley just sort of sauntered up to the craft service area and said, "Hi, I'm DeForest Kelley. Hey, you must be playing Spock as a teenager. How you doing?" And he was just this cowboy, Want some coffee? I'm having tea. Great, I'll have coffee with you. And we just hung out for like an hour. I'm sitting there with Doc. And he had been in Westerns for years, but very, very nice fellow. Great
thing about the business is most people in it are really wonderful. I found I had the same agent as George Takei and Scotty, Steve Stevens.
I was at Pensacon and I introduced myself to George in the elevator and he said, "It's Takei."
Oh, that's right. We were neighbors in Hancock Park. But I mean, just people you meet on the set are just kind of extraordinary. I did 300 shows in 30 years, and I had really maybe one mediocre experience, but most of them were.
You were very lucky.
Well, I was. My most interesting experience was on Seinfeld. I played the bra manufacturer, the bro or the man's ear, and when I went in to read, you know what those rooms are like. They're built for 10 people, and there's 40. All of them could change your career. And so I'm playing the bra manufacturer in the audition. And there were like 10 guys ahead of me who were had comedy specials on Comedy Central. I mean, and the room was roaring with laughter. You could hear it down the block. And I'm looking at the script thinking, I don't think this is very funny, really. So I go in and I'm introduced, and of course you're reading with a casting director who's not very good, nice person, but not very good. And not one sound as I did the scene, not a sound. And when it was over, Larry David said, "That was very funny." And Jerry Seinfeld said, "Yes, Larry, very funny." And I got the part because I played the character. Right? I wasn't trying.
That's great.
All of the other guys were comics, and they were going for the laughs and playing the laughs. And I've done that too, but I thought this guy is selling bras. I mean, what the hell's funny about that? Might be sexy, but not this guy. I mean, I made a career of 300 eunuchs is what I played. Guys with no sexual identity. And that was tough. I mean, married, a couple of kids, I thought it was pretty hot. Nah, forget it. Not happening. What was your favorite show?
My favorite show? That's a great question. Probably the one that didn't get picked up. And actually, the same director that directed me in this directed a pilot. We did. I don't know if you remember the film. It was cars.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did the pilot. And one of the best times I've ever had on the set, fortunately it was the same director. I think that's how I ended up getting on Star Trek. But it was people, one of the rare times with a couple people were names, a couple weren't. I wasn't at the time. I'd just been on Knots Landing for a couple of years. And everybody on the set was a human being and wanted to have fun. And what Victor Lobel, who directed this episode, was about treating people like people, and that made it a joy. Because the worst was like you had one experience. I went on to a different nighttime soap opera where I guessed him for a short arc. And the diva that I worked with, I spent an entire day with her from sun up to sundown, and if it wasn't on the page, she didn't say a word to me. And
I had a few of those.
That's the least favorite. We're
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah.
You know, we get to the joy of being other human
Right.
beings and helping
Yeah.
to tell a story. And if we can't do that together, why are we there? You know? Whereas John Forsythe, who was the star of that series,
Yeah, it was great. I did a year on there.
on Dynasty.
No, on Knots Landing.
I
Sorry.
did 3 there. No, but I went over to Dynasty for an arc, 5, 6 episodes. And I didn't work with John per se, but we were there the whole time together. I do Steve, you know. And we spent the day hanging out. And this guy told me from Actors Studio stories with Marlon Brando, who I later had a moment. This was a human being. John Forsythe, what a sweet gentleman, who would spend the day hanging out with you, and the person I'm working with didn't even say good morning or good night.
Yeah.
You know, you remember those people. You do. First movie of the week I did was with Robert Preston, The Music Man, right? We did a Western together called September Gun. And he was the September Gun, and Patty Duke was the nun who we had to save from us bad guys. And I've never forget, it was the first movie of the week I did, and I've never forgotten what it was like to work with a person who was the greatest gentleman I've ever met in my life. Who, we were in Old Tucson for a month shooting, and in Old Tucson, it's a recreation of Old Tucson. And it's a movie set, and it's a living museum, and there's tourists and people, and every single human being who came up to Robert Preston, whether they were a tourist, an extra, someone who was working with him, the director, the producers, everybody got the same eye contact and listened. He wasn't waiting for his moment to be the guy. He listened and he responded, and he was the same human being with every person who came up to me, and it was not a greater lesson that I've learned in 52 years in this business than that.
Yeah, I taught for 20 years at East Tennessee State University, and the first thing I told my students, I taught acting for the camera, I said, I recurred on 11 series, and I said, it's not because I'm good, I'm not bad, but I'm not, there's no reason for 11.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm good, but
Yes, it is.
Well, in any event, what I really am is nice. I never went on a set where I wasn't nice to everybody, unless there was something bad. But generally, well, I got on All in the Family quite by accident. I just moved to LA from Philly, and I was doing workshops, 99-seat waiver theater, trying to get somebody to go, hello.
That's how I got Knots Landing.
Yeah, well, that's how I got All in the Family, which I did. So there was this big, heavy kid on this set of the show I was doing in Santa Monica. I have no idea what was in this show or what it was about, but I was trying to get seen by people. And I was really nice to this kid. He had sandals, he was overweight and sort of galumpy. But he seemed sweet, and we talked and everything, and it was good. And about a week into the show, I get a phone call. I don't have an agent. I get a phone call from Norman Lear's office. They want me to come in and read for All in the Family. This kid was the son of the producers of one of Lear's shows. And he went on and said, hey, there's a guy working in this series, really a nice guy, and he's out here from Philly, doesn't have an agent. We should see you. You should see him. And
You
so,
did Palmer, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I find this happens with old timers who've been around a long time and they've got battle damage to them. They're the nicest people in the world because they've seen what chaos causes.
yeah.
And, you know, I've been on plenty of sets as well where the prima donna or the person with the ego literally sometimes gets people hurt.
Well, yeah.
And you're never too old to learn from people with experience in any regard. I was fortunate on Star Trek. I had worked as a child and as a teen, and there were several people on that film that I had worked with before on other shows. The stuntmen I knew real well. They had known that I had gotten third-degree burns working on the film The Hindenburg, which was a mess to work on the last day. So when I was on Star Trek, they said, "Stevie, come over here." I said, "What?" They said, "You see that?" I said, "Yeah, that's a trap door. Fire's coming out of there, so stay away from that." This over here, that's going to blow up, all right? You need to keep clear of this and that over here. When they turn the wind machines on, look this way so you don't get stuff in your eyes. These kinds of things pay off for you. The makeup guys, they had the wrong set of ears for me the first time I showed up. And the makeup guys.
What else could you say?
Yeah, they couldn't figure out
Where are my ears?
my ears weren't fitting. Eventually, on one of the days, they tracked down all my proper fitting ears. But the makeup guys, one, Wes Dawn, his family goes back to the Wizard of Oz doing makeup. James Cale was a famous makeup guy. They got busy, they had to start doing the Klingons. They sent me over to the guy, and it was Michael Caine's personal makeup man, Tony Hart. You know, and he taught me the trick of putting a line underneath my eyes, you know, for 1/4 of an inch on either side. He said, otherwise, they won't see your eyes. I do this with Michael here, you know. There you go. The wardrobe fellas, I had known them from Little House on the Prairie from an episode that I did. So I felt comfortable there because I knew quite a lot of people. And like I said, I've been on some sets where it's so uncomfortable. But you know something? Everything comes out in the wash eventually. You know, you end up on something else, and people remember you, like that young man did.
Yeah, it's the sweetest. It's great.
You
You reminded me of my mother, who's from Ireland, and she had not much respect for my chosen career. And so she lived in Wildwood, New Jersey, and I was in LA. And I would call her and I'd say, "Hi, Mom, I'm going to be on Alice." I was a regular on Alice. That was my first break, actually. Did 14 of those. And I said, "I'm going to be on Alice this coming Sunday on CBS." And she said, "Oh, that's fine. I'll watch." And I called the next week. She says, "Well, I saw you on the show. You were very good. Have you gotten a job yet?" Never ended. The poor woman died at 86. Thought, what the hell is my son doing? He's waiting for his ears.
Right.
But yeah, it's so funny. I think it's what killed Richard Burton. You know, all of his brothers were coal miners and stuff, and he thought, I shouldn't be doing this. So he drank himself to death. So, do you folks have any questions for anybody? Anything you'd like to ask about any show at all, ever?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And first of all, I'm up here because the guy who runs this show said our moderator didn't show up. Will you go moderate?
Okay.
So I'm a very last minute fill in. And
Oh,
I
good.
came in 9 minutes late, and you clearly don't need a moderator.
Well,
We're actors, we know how to talk.
Exactly.
Self-moderation, right?
we just met for the first time. We're already bonding in blood, you know.
But I'm curious to know what role you played on All in the Family.
Oh, that's a good story too. So that was a real break for me. This kid got me in, you know, and so I go in to read, and I played a guy who's the last. I did 2 of them, 2 episodes. It was the last season of All in the Family. Now you talk about people who are, it's very hard for somebody to be nice when they just put their chair in the Smithsonian Institute. I mean, my wife, Lord rest her, Beatrice Colin, was Marcia the Car Hop on Happy Days and was Etta Candy on Wonder Woman. And yeah, oh yeah, no, she died at 51 of lung cancer, which she got from treatment for Hodgkin's when she was a teenager. But anyway, it was, so I go on the audition for All in the Family, and I got cast as a guy who was dating the Liz Torres, who in the last season was rooming in Archie's house. They were trying to get more conflict. It was the last year. They were trying to find new lines of attack for the script. So they had, well, the trouble was Archie loved Liz as an actor, as a person, and he just couldn't be mean to her, so the thing never really worked as a gimmick. But anyway, on the episode, I play this guy who's dating Liz Torres, and Archie and Edith are going away for the weekend, and we're there alone. So Archie in the beginning is saying, "Why are you dating that fag?" So all of a sudden, I'm a homosexual, and I shouldn't be dating a woman. We got away with a lot of stuff in '76 you might not do today. So that was the thing. Throughout the thing, he's gay, he's never, why are you bothering with this guy? So they didn't make it for the weekend. They come back, and she and I are in Archie and Edith's bedroom. And there's a knock on the door, and I open the door, and it said, "Is that you, sweetheart?" And a big kiss, and it's Edith. So a huge kiss on Edith, and then I spend the rest of the episode trying to not be seen by Archie. But what was wonderful, I mean, it was fine, it was a good episode, it was a good show, and it helped start my career. But the first scene we shot in front of a live audience, and I was so scared. I'm 35. This Sunday I will be 51 years sober. So that's one of the reasons we're all having this conversation. So I'm 35, trying to get going after having been drunk for 14 years and touring with Benny Grable in Texas, in Born Yesterday. And then all of a sudden, now I'm in LA trying to make it. But I'm late, I'm 35, trying to make it. And I come out in that scene, and these guys will know, I was tight. I was just very tight and very scared. And I was average. I was just sort of okay. And I think they would have accepted the scene as it was shot because it's expensive in those setups to reshoot, and especially in front of a live audience. Yeah. And so Reiner and Sally Struthers knew that I wasn't as good as I'd been in rehearsal. So they blew the scene.
Oh, wow.
They blew the scene.
Class.
You talk about the wonderful nature of people. I mean, they had nothing to gain from that. They didn't know me.
Right.
And maybe actually you sort of make me think when you talked about the stuntman. The other side, I did an episode of O'Hara. It was Pat McReady's series that he did after he did the Karate Kid stuff. And two stories from that. One was the stunt guy who's not looking out for you.
Right.
We had
Took his parking spot, that's what it is.
you know you're in trouble when everybody else is behind a protective shield. And you're out front.
Yeah.
But what Pat did, which I've never, and I teach a couple of acting master classes in town, and what Pat did, and I always teach this to the kids, we had a scene, I'm the crook and he's the cop. And he's got to catch me, and I'm not going to let him catch me, but I got to give him information. And we shot it in the sports arena in LA. Now it's Staples Center, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I'm up in the stands, and he comes in. And Pat was such a good actor. He knew you had to have this. But he's down on center court, and I'm up in the stands. And he came in and we started, he said, and he stops and he begs the director's forgiveness and says, yeah, I'm having trouble with the words. Forget my words. Do you mind if I work the lines with him for a minute? So he took me down into the hallway. There's that place where the guys come out of the locker room out into the court.
Yeah,
and he took me down into the tunnel. And the two of us worked the scene together. And that's what Pat wanted to do. Pat knew my words. He didn't know. Pat knew every word in the script from front to back. But he just wanted to be there with the actor to create the moment. And he took it upon himself to tell the director he didn't know the words, so he could do that. And then we went back out and had the whole scene. That's a human being. That's a human being.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. Pat Morita never got that.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. So, again, any questions? Otherwise, we're going to talk a lot. I can tell that now, and that's wonderful.
Okay, I got one more that nobody's going to care about.
Okay.
Because when you said about those iconic actors coming forward and singing, I'm Jewish, so I'm singing in the choir at Temple Israel of Hollywood. It's on Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, yeah. Know it well.
And it's the high holy days, and we come out, and sitting in the front row is Kirk and Spock.
Very good.
That was like, this is really a high holy day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
My wife, who died, Beatrice Colin, the actor, was Jewish. She was George Kaufman's granddaughter. And he wrote You Can't Take It With You, the man who came to dinner once in a lifetime. And God,
Real schlock writer.
oh, yeah, really schlock. And what was fun about that is I'm of an age where that meant, when I was growing up and in my drinking days, I wanted to be part of two groups. I wanted to be either on the Algonquin Round Table with Kaufman and Edna Ferber and Dorothy Parker, or I wanted to be with John Barrymore and Errol Flynn. There you go.
Go. I got a
Sure
story.
you do.
I got a story.
And so, anyway, Betsy and I got married in '77, and we were going to go to Vegas and find an Elvis impersonator. We didn't do that. And I was raised Catholic, but I had burned out of that group. So wasn't sure what we could do. But she was Jewish, so I thought, I've always thought of myself as a Judeo-Christian. So I thought, I will find a rabbi who will marry us. Not very easy in 1977. So I finally found a guy, Rabbi Will Kramer, who said, listen, it isn't Hitler we have to worry about, it's mixed marriages. So he said, I will marry you two, but you have to, tell your kids that your wife is Jewish. I said, no problem. So we were married by Will, but I came back to my wife and I said, we're going to be married by a rabbi. She said, that's great. And she said, I want to be married, and she picked a Saturday. I said, are you nuts? That's Shabbos, for God's sake. You can't be married on Saturday. So she wasn't the kind of Jew who understood the holy day setup. But we had a 22-year marriage. In fact, the year before she died, Rabbi Kramer came, and my kids were there, and redid the ceremony, which I have on tape, which I don't watch much anymore. It's tough, but, my boys lost their mother at 17 and 16. And that was a tough sell, really. Anyway, you got a funny story.
Oh, yeah, it's a great drunk actor story. It's one of my favorite drunk actor stories. And it came from doing that picture with Robert Preston. Because the director was Don Taylor, who, the original father of the bride, he was the groom. And Don and Robert had 120 years in the business between them. And instead of paying me for that picture, I'd have paid them just to go to the bar with them every night. The stories were, firsthand Marx Brothers stories, firsthand Barrymore stories, and Preston starred in silent films, and he told this story, which is apparently a true story, and I don't remember who the other actor was. Barrymore was on tour with an actor of equal standing, at least in the barroom. That's true. And they would, as actors tend to do, they would go out after the show and get drunk. But these guys would drink around the clock to the next show.
Yeah.
And did. And they're upstage, on stage, and upstage center is a fireplace. And the prompter is behind the wall in the fireplace. And they're leaning against the fireplace. And the other actor says, the line, the line. And the prompter gives the line. And Barry Moore says, we know what it is. Who says it?
Classic.
And it's apparently a true story. Yes. If it came from Robert Preston's lips.
My question is, did they finally get the Brooklyn Bronx out of the cop that you played?
Yeah,
in
they
Star
did.
Trek?
Yeah, I do accents.
Right.
I do dialect. I do all of that. But in the moment, I didn't. When I heard it, I could hear the inflections and I corrected all of them. And they were happy. And it didn't, and it wasn't a long ADR session. But every word in the script I had to change. Yeah. Because once you start, then you got to finish the line. So if it was a word where I did an R instead of an R, you know, or a the instead of a the, so then I had to do the whole line. And I had to go through the entire script to do it.
It's weird because the Last Temptation of Christ, all the actors.
All sounded like this.
That was one of the worst films
Yeah.
ever made.
And it's all biblical, and they're all talking like
I
that.
don't know if you remember
Jesus.
Tony Curtis. That yonder lies the castle of my father.
Oh, right. Yes.
I don't know what Gina Keeper sounded like.
Right? And I was actually discovered by the same woman that discovered him, Joyce Selzman.
Oh, God.
Found me here in 1980 and brought me to LA.
My father-in-law, Betsy's stepfather, Irving Schneider, was Joyce Selznick's partner. Wow. Produced Streetcar on Broadway.
Oh my God.
So there's only 400 of us in this business.
Yeah, totally.
We all know all
And
the
half
same.
of us are Catholic and half of us are Jews.
Right. They married each other. And now we're back to the problem. So. But I did a movie called Sibling Rivalry, which was directed by Carl Reiner. And I was so proud of it. It was a small role, but I had one big scene. I was the manager of a hotel where somebody gets killed in a room. And so we shoot the scene, and then we did it one of those West Wing styles where I'm walking very fast down the aisle, and the camera, and you got to get it all right. And so this little guy next to me is going, are we going to be able to rent the room, sir? Are we going to be able to rent the room? Of course we can't rent the goddamn room. There was a goddamn motor in the goddamn room. How the hell are you going to rent the goddamn room when there's a goddamn corpse in it? And we brought. So as we're doing the scene, as we're doing the scene, I thought, this is otherwise a very PG-rated film. I'm saying goddamn like it's a candy bar where we're going to sell. And I thought, this isn't going to fly when they start running this on network, you know. But I'm not going to say anything. That's the line. So I'm doing it. So sure enough, that film was made, and they called and they said, we need to reshoot your entire scene. Actually, they didn't. They said I had to do ADR. I had to go in and take the God out of it. Mm-hmm. So I had to follow very carefully to make sure my lips said, there's a damn murder in the damn room, and they're not going to rent the damn room with the damn corpse in the damn room. We could do that and still stay okay, but goddamn no good, not going to do it. So I made another $3,000. There you go. I mean, there's always ways to make a living.
There's a lot of tricks to ADR.
Explain what ADR is. It's a
Additional dialogue
replacement.
required.
Yeah. If you watch a lot of Universal cop shows and TV shows, Columbo, Rockford, things like that. We were just talking about that. You'll listen to James Garner outside, you can tell the track is live, and all of a sudden it goes kind of dead, and his voice seems weird, and then it goes right back into live dialogue. Something happens, the sound goes bad, there's wind, the batteries went out of the
Plane went
microphone.
overhead.
Yeah, plug plane, yeah, anything, things go on. But you go in and they play your scene, and there's a countdown and a beep, and you've got to match your words to it. I've always been best not watching it
Yeah.
I'll just have them play it back with no visual and just get into the rhythm of how I did it and then fly it in. And I work better that way. Some people work better watching it.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
The first time it was, I remember the first time I did it, it was blue.
Yeah.
Because I'm a theater, well, we all probably started in theater.
Theater, yes.
And I'm used to being here with a human being and props and costumes. And when you're on a set, it's a real life that you're living. And now you're in a room that's this big with a set of earphones and you're watching your mouth.
Yeah. Whenever
How do you do that?
Yeah, whenever I anticipate that there's a plane, the battery's I'll go over to the sound guy in the same environment and just give him the lines.
How smart.
Then he just gives it to the
That's
editors and they
beautiful.
just
That's
transfer
good.
it already
I love
got
that.
it.
Oh.
I wish I was.
I wish I
teaching.
was that smart.
I wish I was. Yes. I wish
No,
I
but
was
then
still
they're just gonna
teaching.
put it on the current paycheck. You gotta get an extra paycheck.
See,
That's
now you're thinking.
Now
Now you're thinking.
You're making it easy for them.
Making it easier for them also gets me more work and something
Yeah.
else later on, you know, because they realize you're easy and stuff, you know. But
Anybody? Questions? We're going.
There's one, yes,
There
thank
go,
you.
yay.
Well, I apologize we were late. So you
No.
may have already said this.
We'll say it again.
All right.
We're actors.
So,
Take two.
what, were all of you in a Star Trek show or movie? And if you were, did you take that role because you're just taking work? Or was there something about sci-fi that you loved? Or there was a buddy involved? Like what got you into that?
We're
universe?
all Star
Paycheck.
We're all Star Trek veterans, and we all needed to make a living.
Yes.
But I will tell you, for me, the surprise, stunning, great joy of doing conventions, and I understand nobody comes here, well, one at every convention comes to see me. For the rest of them, I'm the candy bar next to the cash register. You know, you came to see him, and on the way out, I got another buck, sure, I'll buy that. But at every convention, I have had at least one, and the big ones was maybe two, people who actually know who I am, which is a stunner to begin with. I've done hundreds of things, and I'm the guy you don't remember. But every one of these was a gig. Thank God I'm paying the mortgage this week.
Yeah.
You know,
Private
this
school.
month, I need to, my kid's in school, I gotta get a car, I gotta do a thing. It's a gig, and we're here because we're fortunate enough to do the thing we love and make a living doing it. And every picture that I'm signing was just another paycheck, it was a gig. And at every one of these conventions I've had, the first MONSTERAMA that I did, I can see her face, a woman who came up, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. She had me sign two, one for her and one for her husband. And it was for her husband, because this was the film, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. This was the film that helped her husband get through cancer stage 3.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God. I get the chills
Sure.
saying it. It was, thank God I got this gig, and I ended up working with that director 2 more times because we hit it off. And it paid bills, and that's why I did it.
Yeah.
And frankly, I love doing sci-fi and horror. I don't like watching horror films. There are some that I can't because I know the way it got done. But there's some I just can't watch. You know? But that this horror film, which when I watched it, and I rewatched it because of the cons, there were things in the thing that are very disturbing to me. And that got a person through his cancer treatments. It blows my flipping mind. It just truly does. Maybe it's different for you guys.
No, I mean, I had, people used to get annoyed at me teaching Tennessee where I talked about money. We don't talk about money, darling. I'm sorry, what are we doing here? We're talking about money. So, from 1970 to 2000, I made $75,000 a year. Now, some years I made 180, some years I made 35. First 3 years I made 2,500. But when you put it all together over a 30-year span, I made $75,000 a year. You're not going to Vegas a lot on this, and certainly not sluts, but I made a living. I mean, I made a good living, and I put my boys through private school. They went to school with Leonard Nimoy's kids. They went to school with Michael Keaton's kids. My son was dating Anna Paquin, or whatever her name is. I never remember these people. I coached baseball for 10 years. My team was Denzel Washington's kids, Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Josh Groban, and my boys. And so that was LA. That was growing up in LA. And I lived in Hancock Park. And none of the kids from Brentwood would come to visit us because they said it was a dangerous neighborhood. I sold my house, thank God, because I sold my house I bought it for $280. I sold it for $675. So I walked away with $250,000. A year later, with no changes, it sold for $1,750,000.
Wow.
And now it's on the market for $3,750,000, and it still isn't any better than when I was there in the first place.
The neighborhood's gotten worse.
And the neighborhood has gotten. So
Real estate in LA.
yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to have worked enough to have made enough money to be able to retire on a couple of acting pensions.
Yeah, I go to.
And as I said, in 2008, I decided, my wife and I decided, either I was done with LA or LA was done with me, with the love affair was over. And I was in Laurel Canyon for 20 plus years, a little cute spot at the top of the canyon. We said, we're going to sell the house. We sold the house. The day before, well, no, 2 days after the market turned, when the market crashed. And we were able to make enough off of that to come here after the market crashed and pay cash. We had a 1,250 square foot house on 6,500 square foot lot. We came here with the cash that we made, cashed out and bought 3,400 square feet on 3/4 of an acre with a lake. Done. Thank you very much. Real estate in LA.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it was that part of it was interesting, and as my accountant said, you don't get a pat on the back for not getting the $1 million that came a year later. So, but it was hard when I was there. I had 2 kids. Public school was not an option, so they went to St. James, where 80% of the students were Korean. You know what is trying to set up a play date? The only one who speaks English is 6 years old. And, because the parents don't speak English. Then my kids went to Brentwood, and, a lot of famous people. It was a very interesting, and for me, I was the Mick from Philly with his nose pressed to the window, watching all these people be wonderful. And I'm 83, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for the career I had. And I joined Equity in 1965, doing the Devil and Damn Yankees in Memphis, Tennessee. And then in
I'm sure you planned on doing conventions when you were done.
Well, this is my 3rd convention. I'm very weird, certainly for a monster. I did Dr. Giggles, and I did Star Trek, and I did Splash. But I'm more of a generalist kind of dude, like Seinfeld was my favorite. And Knots Landing, what was the lead guy in there who was brilliant? Bill
Devane.
Bill Devane.
I came on before Devane came on.
Oh, I did a year with him. I played his lawyer.
I was Donna Mills' attorney for 3 seasons.
So anyway, I'm a year with Bill Devane, and I had one scene in a restaurant in Santa Monica. And God, I love actors. I'm doing this scene, and I'm pretty good, and it's a monologue, and I'm talking to him about why he can't run for office. And there was nothing untoward about it. Without giving me a lesson, he actually made me 10 times better than I would have been in the scene without it.
Doing?
He just talked me into some choices that I wasn't making. And like your friend, like Pat Morita, he was kind enough to, and like Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner, who blew the scene, so I had another shot. People are like that. Yeah, I had bad experience. I worked with drunks, not me then, I was sober, but I worked with drunks, and I worked with people who were mean. I worked with a guy once who knew Lenny Bruce, who was an idol of mine. I loved Lenny Bruce. And this guy would sell his soul for, you know, whatever. And I said, how can you do this? You worked with Lenny Bruce, for God's sake. You have no soul, man. And he said, well, I don't think I'll hire you again. I said, I don't want to work for you. He was a producer at Universal. That was the other thing. We'll never work again. Boring. I mean, you always did. But again, it was great there. Did you have kids in L.A.?
Yeah, my son's still there. He's a writer and a rock and roller. He did a band called Juan, and 8 albums.
Oh, well.
And, they would alternate national tour, European tour, national tour. And he's written 2 novels, and he's got a couple screenplays hanging around.
Fantastic. Do you have any more questions?
I was going to ask, can you ask me that question again?
Yes.
Because it was
Yeah,
throwing some
I was
stuff.
asking if you were on episode of the movie, and I was wanting to know
Right.
what roles.
Right.
And if you took the job because it was a job, or took it because you love sci-fi.
Okay. Slight little backstory. Don't fall asleep. Okay. My grandfather started in silent films. He lived with us. His first job was in Tolerance for D.W. Griffith.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, that's cool.
I was film school. I remember.
Sure, yeah. He lived with us. He was an immigrant from Italy. Learned to speak English, became a citizen after World War I, joined a circus, ended up in LA on the circus train. They're casting for Intolerance. I have his hand-tinted wardrobe test from Intolerance. I've got his makeup kit from the 20s and 30s where he played character actors. You know, he did a lot of characters. He was in the Marx Brothers in the State Room in Night at the Opera in that famous shot. He was the guy that took the umbrella from Gene Kelly and Singing in the Rain.
Wow.
Routine. He was with the Little Rascals. He knew Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. All of these guys. He was Peter Lorre's stunt double for a while. He was Edward G's stunt double for a while. He worked a lot. Nobody knew him. He didn't speak a lot, but he loved the business, and everybody knew him. I was fortunate that a lot of the people I knew still knew my grandfather, so they kept a good eye on me when I was working. Nimoy had seen me. This goes to being a gig or not. For me, I was young enough that money didn't really enter my consciousness with it. I wanted to make my grandfather proud of me. I started learning method techniques by working with people like, you know, Tommy Lee Jones on a project, or, you know, George C. Scott on a project, and things that I had shot from the hip with, working with these people. Eventually I got some good theater training that taught me what I was actually doing, right? And how to harness it. But I enjoyed working. I saw craftsmen all over the place. I practically grew up on the Universal lot in the 70s. I saw things that would make people just freak out. You know, I was on the Hindenburg, which was a really dangerous set. I got third-degree burns on that. On the very last day, my buddy was on Earthquake. So I had another friend on the Towering Inferno. I mean, it was an interesting period. You know, that Universal is no longer around. I got a phone call from my manager, and she said, Leonard Nimoy wants to see you. Now, it wasn't an audition. There was no dialogue. He wants to see you. Why? He had seen me in a series done by David Jacobs, who was a friend of mine. And he wrote an episode where I was not coming to terms with my mom's death because I wasn't there, and I end up with a fortune teller at a carnival. And Zora Lempert played the fortune teller. And he looked at me and he said, hey kid, be on your game. Zora's going to work with you and she'll steamroll over you if you're not, you know, come to the plate. I fell in love with Zora. I thought she was beautiful. She was very heavy method. During the scenes, when they would call cut, she would just sit there and look at me like this. And she said, I want to call you by your character name. I'm going to call you Danny. And I said, fine. I just couldn't take my eyes off of her. I knew what she was doing. I was learning. I could throw it right back. We worked great together. She wrote me a love letter after we were finished, which my stage mom got very jealous of, and that disappeared real quick. So Leonard was a friend of hers. And when I showed up to the audition, this will answer two of your questions in a roundabout way.
Best way.
Best way. The first thing I noticed was he himself, since he was directing this, he had Starlog, Fangoria, Cinema Fantastique, all these Star Trek magazines and encyclopedias all over the office. So he himself had immersed himself in that because he's going to direct this thing, right? So he took it very serious. I've never seen a Starlog in another director's office before, okay? And he said, how did you like working with Zora? And I could tell he was fishing for something. And I told him the truth. I said, I loved it. I thought she was wonderful. She's a beautiful lady. She's a great actress. And we got along terrific. And he said, good, because I saw you working with her. And you passed the test. Most people are very intimidated by it. A lot of people on that show who were. You know, she walked in with this presence, which I dug. But some people were really intimidated by it. My mom included. And he said, you don't have dialogue in this, but I want you to bring what you did with Zora to what I'm going to do in these scenes. And I said, great. Who am I playing? And he said, well, you're playing me. You're playing me at 17. And it's the Pon Farr scene, and they've not shown that, and blah, blah, blah. So think about Zora when you did it. We'll talk about it. We'll create this together. Got it. Gig, great. Get paid, wonderful. I was 18 years old. I had been working my entire life. But it wasn't for guys who were a little bit older than me. It was very, at the time. I was 18 years old. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I didn't have school to pay for. I wasn't, but I had a career I was working on. So each job meant something to me, right? The guys that I grew up with in the industry, there was one here last year, Stephen Gustafson, who I hadn't seen since 1975, and we looked at each other like two ducks who just figured out where the rain was coming from, got reacquainted. It was a different breed of child actor back then. You could either be a real pain in the ass and cause people problems, or you were very professional, but for some reason you were already an adult at 10, which was weird. I knew kids that were supporting whole families of 10 people, and they had a lot on their shoulders. So Leonard says to me before I walked out, he said, you got the job. He said, listen to me. He said, you've been around a long time. I like your work. I know you're professional. I checked you out, blah, blah, blah. He said, Star Trek's going to be with you for the rest of your life. He said, look at me. He said, it's treated me really well. He said, so I want you to take this as serious as I have. Honor me, respect me, you're playing me, and you treat the fans good because you'll be treating them good for the rest of your life. He said, you'll be doing conventions until the day you die. He said, because you're going to be the Pon Farr Spock. And I looked at him and he put his hand out. He said, yes. I said, yes. Pop culture is the new religion, At my first Star Trek convention, which is 20 years ago, I'm sitting there with my soon-to-be wife, and I'm a fan of my own things. I love Indiana Jones, love Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, okay? He was a child actor who became a badass. I love him. But I'm sitting there with my pictures at my table, and I look like this, and there's a 19-year-old girl with her dad, and she's dressed really Star Trek hot. Okay? And she's staring me down like she wants to eat me. and I'm looking at her like that, and I've never been to a convention before. It took me a long time to do Trek conventions, and she slinks up to my table in a really hot outfit that was revealing, and her father was and she looks at my wife, and then she looks at me and she says, I'm your other wife.
Oh, snap.
And I said, Star Trek, and she knew the whole. She said, this is such episode, this is my outfit, our history goes back to this, that, and the other, and you fight for me, and you know, I'm married to you, and I'm still waiting for you on Vulcan. And I looked at my wife, and she said, she buys a picture, I'm cool with it, don't worry about it. And of course, listen, I realize, okay, I got an Indiana Jones bullwhip. It's made by the same guy, okay? I've got Kurt Russell's Mac 10 because I know Sid Stembridge and he gave me the original parts to have molds made. I love Snake Plissken. People who follow Trek, people who follow Star Wars, people who follow Twilight, you know, a few centuries ago, nobody could read. They had people read them the Bible. Those became their heroes. Now, it's Marvel, it's DC, it's Star Wars, it's Trek. There's nothing wrong with that, man. If that's what makes your life good, if that's what gets you through cancer, if that's what gets you through illnesses.
Right.
I've known people now, I've been doing these things for 20 years. Their whole house looks like the Enterprise.
Yeah.
They go to work in their Starfleet thing, right? And people say, you can't wear that at work. Well, this is my affiliation, and this is my ship, and et cetera, et cetera. It means something to them. I get it. Is it a gig? Yeah. But there's a big responsibility with that gig. If you take it too lightly, it's going to show up on the screen, and you did a disservice. You know? So, long run.
That's very special to you.
Yeah.
You had, holy shit, excuse me.
That's all right.
I mean, no, you had an experience
Uh-huh.
that is magnificent, and to share that with us. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank
you.
Wow.
Sure.
That's a little different, more than a little different than what we did.
Yeah,
Well-
because I had kids to
We
put through private school.
auditioned for a
Right.
gig that was going to pay the bills. You had a life experience that I'm frankly in awe of.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. Well, let me tell you, I learned to read because my grandfather pulled scripts out, and he taught me to read by reading film scripts.
Wow.
Okay. Then he tried to teach me Italian. That didn't go quite as well. But I've been auditioning as long as I can remember. I remember being 6 and 7 years old, sitting on the floor in those hallways at Warner Brothers with other kids who were going in on that same part. They're going to get it, so you might as well just walk home. You know? It was a weird way to grow up. You also grew up very, very fast.
Yeah.
I gravitated towards the guys who looked like they were kind of the tough guys who'd been around a lot. The stuntmen, some of the makeup guys, the camera guys, the special effects people, stuff like that. You know, people who had stories to tell that I could relate to, people who had known of my grandfather. Oh, I worked with him years ago on that. I knew Steve. His name was Steve. You know. But auditioning, my God, I've been auditioning my whole life, man. It's what you got to do.
Were any of your other siblings?
Have none.
Oh, okay.
Had none. My grandfather died 2 days before I was burned, 3rd-degree burns on the Hindenburg. After a 3-month shoot that was so dangerous, I saw a guy killed on the set on the floor. And watched the director and the AD step over and go, next shot. That was
Yeah, there are some bad moments.
that was a life-changing experience for me.
This is why we have
You know, but you know, I've always been a bit out of sync with my peer group, they say. So hopefully, as the years get onward with me, I'll start kicking into gear again. This year's been a pretty good year. The last few years, I've been looking at some good stuff again. You know, but anyway, my point was, in a Monty Python roundabout way, okay, was I took it serious. Leonard Nimoy took it serious, let me tell you. Because on that set, he was a chain smoker. And he was concerned about every single shot. Why? He was always worried what the fans were going to say about him. You know? And there was a fellow there who you guys might know, Richard Arnold was there. And he worked with Gene Rodden. They knew Trek history up and down. So whenever there was a question if something would work or not, they had a conference. And I saw a few of those. So they took it serious. Gigs, yes, it's hard for an actor to get work. You know, it's really a bitch. I mean, you go on these auditions, now you do them remotely on video, you know, and they send them in, which is good and bad. But it's not easy.
No.
You know, never easy, never easy. And for a while, I thought some of the big stars had it easy. Some of them have to audition too. Some of them have to bid for the job.
Yeah, it's too big.
Which I was unaware of. I didn't know how that worked. You know.
Everybody thinks you get to that spot and your problems are over. But if you just traded those
Exactly.
for these,
Exactly.
that's it.
So I've talked quite a bit. I probably put you to sleep.
No, no.
It was
No,
important for
you
me to tell you because that was a really poignant question.
Well, there's an age, I mean, I had a lot of those experiences when I was younger. I started at 3 in the Horn and Heart Children's Hour in Philadelphia. And at 7, I was doing vaudeville. I was doing 4 shows a day. I was doing 11, 4, 7, and 9 at age 7, 8, 9 years old. And I did tours for Korean vets and stuff. And then when I was 18, I had an act with a stripper. I used to sing Unchained Melody while she took her clothes off. And I was making $200 a weekend doing that when the average worker was making $80 a week. So I was in the gig game. Then I go to college, and like you being taught by Zora Lampert, I started to fall in love with the idea of what this meant.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with several people, Richard Burton being one, and Eugene O'Neill really became my idol. And I did a lot of work in Philly we used to pass things around and get cans of beans. You know, we were doing Moon for the Misbegotten, we were doing Long Day's Journey into Night. So there was no gig mentality then. But I got sober, and then I got married, and then I had children, and then all of a sudden, I didn't want to do Saved by the Bell. Although there's a story. I go in an audition. So I was the head of the school board. So I come running into the set, and I go, "Where's Shrek? I need to speak with Shrek." And that's how I auditioned. It was real. It was believable. I want to talk to this guy. So we get on the set. And the guy, it's versions of Louder, Faster, Funnier. So he said, "We need to," I thought, oh, shit, this is going to go bad. He said, "We need more," you know, I thought, I know what you want. It's not what I did in the audition, but I know what you want. So I did, "So where's Shrek?" "Yeah, but if we just had a little more," I thought, oh dear. By the time we taped it, I looked like Nixon on the last day of shooting. I came in going, "Where's Shrek? Where's Shrek?" That's it. That's what we wanted. I did not want to do this show, but it was $2,500, and it was an automatic resid in the summer. I mean, that was the good old days when you had those. Hell, I made $11,000 last year in residuals. Wow. I trained 2 actors who were working. Allison Gwynn is one of my students. She was on Mrs. Maisel 2 years ago. Was one of the strippers, one of the old strippers. And then she was on Only Murders in the Building with Meryl Streep. She played the stage manager. Again, I talk about money. She made $40,000 for doing that. You can't live in New York for $40,000 for a year. You really can't. I mean, you just can't. She lives in Astoria because she can't afford to live in it. She's done 5 Broadway shows. And she's 40 years old and making her living as an actor, and she's wonderful. But of course, the business has morphed in many ways as the culture has morphed also. And it's now my son James, both James and Charlie, they were in SAG and AFTRA in utero. I mean, I was not going to fool around here. So when they came out of the womb, I'm going SAG-AFTRA. I'm going here. And Charlie, my younger son, was in Jerry Maguire. Oh, that's a great story.
Okay, we have to.
Oh, yeah.
We're done?
Because we're way over the hour.
Oh, God.
Let's go.
Let's go.
One more tag, because you asked me about my son. Any Insidious fans? My son's mother is Lynn Shay.
There you go. Thank you, folks. It was great.